Hello and welcome to Warframe Unabridged. I'm your host Finn, and today we're going to begin our journey through the power kit of Mag as we take a look at a loadout that I have dubbed the Tin Soldier. But first, I would like to announce the winners that have been selected, and they will be contacted. Thank you to those of you who have participated. So, when people think of Mag, they typically envision a frame that was once an ultra-focused corpus-killing laser that DE has nerfed into oblivion, and to be fair, they're right about the former, but the latter is kind of a murky belief born of frustration. Now, once upon a time, Mag could unleash Polarize and completely annihilate any corpus in existence on account of the scaling percentage-based damage, which also caused an eruption that would deal damage to other enemies nearby based on the amount of shields that were depleted. This basically means that you could one-shot Alad V every time you face off with him because of the shields that Zanuka had. And since nearly all corpus have far more shields than health, Mag is just a corpus-killing easy button, or at least she was. Things are different now, and Mag no longer is the greatest destroyer of the corpus, or at least it's not so clear where she stands. Now she's a bit more balanced across all three factions, and in this series it's my intention to reveal that Mag is not the useless frame that she is so often accused of being, by showing you several loadouts that are fully viable, and as such will prove yet again that there are no bad frames, only bad players. But where to begin? There's so many aspects of her kit that are loathed among the Tenno. Well, I would say that we should begin with her basics, the base stats. By beginning here, we can examine the resistances and weaknesses of Mag, or any frame for that matter, and we could build according to these to see their full potential. Now, something that a lot of folks really don't enjoy is getting into the math of it, and I do completely understand, as it can be quite tedious, but to provide you with a relevant example, we need to look no further than the differences between Loki and Zephyr in terms of their base stats. Now, Loki at base has the lowest stats in-game for both health and shields, both of which scale upward from 75 to 225 at max rank. Zephyr is quite the opposite, boasting the highest base scores of health and shields, the only exceptions being Frost Prime's buff and Inaros' extremely unique defensive kit. But for all of the frames that follow the normal curve, she ties for the highest, scaling from 140 at base up to 450 at max rank. But moving the discussion back to Mag, she also ties with frames like Zephyr, Volt, and Harrow for the highest base shields. She also ties with Loki and Avara for the lowest base health. For those of you that aren't familiar with the disparity between health and shields, I'll be happy to provide that. Shields have one advantage, and that is their ability to recharge, but they have many weaknesses. You can even say that their strengths are kind of weaknesses, or at the very least that their strengths are entirely irrelevant. I mean, they're strong against radiation and puncture, and that's pretty much it. Puncture is kind of useful, but only against corpus, and let's face it, if you're going to do endurance runs into oblivion, you're facing off with the corrupted, who don't really deal a lot in puncture. And there are no actual enemies that deal radiation, so it's really only good for radioactive void lasers, but those typically one-shot you anyway. Now, shields are weak against impact, cold, and magnetic, and they are bypassed entirely by slash status and all toxic damage, whether from a gas proc or from the basic toxic damage on a weapon. Health, on the other hand, has several strengths. Chief among them is armor. Most people will look at you, frames like Banshee with a 15 armor, and call her squishy, and they would absolutely be right, no contest. But what if I told you that even 15 armor means that her health, point for point, is more effective than her shields, point for point? It may only be a 5% enhancement above taking 1 damage per damage dealt, but since shields have no damage mitigation, even 5% damage mitigation is, in point of fact, an improvement. Armor mitigates damage that health is even weak against, like slash, toxic, or viral. Now, health also comes with other strengths, like a diverse mod setup, orbs that replenish, the lifesteal mechanic, and it has several other optional protective layers that soak damage, including quick thinking, which delays the last 2 health from being taken until there's no energy remaining to absorb it. Shields that cover the top of it. Overshields on top of that, and with some frames like Rhino, Frost, Gera, or Nesha, they can generate an over-tier of certain types of health. Perhaps the most significant use of health, though, is with the Rage or the Hunter's Adrenaline mods. Now, some of this is niche, some of this is situational, but regardless, it has a lot more going for it than shields do. So at the end of the day, we have the following. Mag is strong versus puncture, so her defenses go further against Corpus, whose weapons are focused on puncture, a result of their great hatred of the Grineer. Mag is weak versus impact, which is the majority of the Grineer's basic weaponry, also a result of their hatred of the Corpus. And since since their weapons are usually hit scan, that's really bad news for Mag. She is weak versus cold, which isn't the most relevant damage type among enemies. She's weak versus magnetic, which is held by exclusively one enemy that I'm aware of, the Ancient Disruptor. She is weak against toxic damage and slash damage, both of which belong to the Infested. So this may be no surprise to you, but the assumption that she is mostly intended to be good against the Corpus units isn't just true regarding her powers, but also her defenses. But this simply won't do for me. I don't want a frame that is weak against Grineer and Infested. I won't do it at all. And that's why we're going to stand that notion on its head with the loadout that I have dubbed the Tin Soldier. Now to begin, our build consists of Retribution, Primed Vigor, Vitality, Gladiator Resolve, Redirection, Augur Accord, Streamline, Prime Continuity, Fleeting Expertise, and Steel Charge. For our arcanes, as you can see, we use Ultimatum and Guardian, and we bring a sidearm along for the sake of moments when we may be downed, for which we will use the Lex Prime. Our primary mode of attack will be with the Sigma and Octanus, grossly abusing its ability to invoke finisher attacks. Our companion will be Jin to make melee combat even more viable, with a Fatal Attraction basically turning off the enemy's ability to know better. And for our operator, we will use Naramon, but primarily for executing dash, so that we can activate Arcane Ultimatum at will. As you can likely tell by now, this build keeps her power stats neutral, and focuses on enhancing her base stats to the extreme, with an intense energy pool sitting at about 263 and health of 1140, shield sitting at 1710, and overshield's cap being raised to 2910. She's sitting alright, pretty defensive, but of course we still have the issue with how weak her defenses are because of the type of defenses that they happen to be. And in that, shields provide little protection, save for providing a bit of a buffer against being one-shot. But even with her 1140 health, we sit at 65 armor, and that's not gonna do. For that, we have two arcanes that contribute each a flat armor rate of 600. Gladiator is perfect for any loadout that is high risk, high reward, and will nearly be running perpetually to begin with. And Ultimatum takes a little bit more work normally, but we have two different ways of invoking finisher attacks, making it a non-issue. With this, Mag sits at 1265 armor, which comes out to around 80% damage mitigation, comparable to Vanilla Valkyr with Steel Fiber. This iteration of Mag sits at around 7400 effective hit points. Now this may not sound like much as far as tanking frames go, but consider she can restore 400 shields per cast above Polarize, as well as a good form of shield restoration from Crush, the latter of which will scale you into overshields. But when you aren't restoring your shields, you have to fill the time somehow. Now my usual tactique with the Tin Soldier is to travel between skirmishes as my Tenno, making use of Naramon's movement enhancements. When I find a squad, I will use Executing Dash on a heavy, assuming there is one, and then I'll do a finisher on them to activate Arcane Ultimate. From that point, I use the mobility of Final Harbinger to quickly spiral from enemy to enemy, and from there, I pepper my combat with powers periodically. The usual formula that I use is whether I'm overwhelmed or not. If I am overwhelmed, but I'm good on shields, I'll use Pull and save on energy. If I'm overwhelmed, but my shields have taken a hit, I'll use Crush and restore my shields while occupying the enemies. However, if I'm not overwhelmed, but my shields have taken a hit, I'll just use Polarize. Otherwise, hack and slash till your heart's content. And that is all there is to the Tin Soldier. Now if you like what I do, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more Warframe content, and maybe ring the bell to get some instant gratification. But until next time, this is Finn, signing off.